Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Talking while they were at the podium. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Clancy I.
I had a cup of coffee sitting there. Oh, you took it. Sit over here. Sit over here. If you want to sit there, come earlier. Sit over here.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
My name is Clancy Imislund. I'm an alcoholic. I'm very glad to be here today, safe and sane and sober, as I like to say, because I didn't used to be, and it's conceivable I may not be again sometime, but I'm doing all right today. I want to congratulate Mario on his reading. When he said he was going to read it in Italian, my heart just went whop whop. But I am glad to be here, and I don't know, as I was sitting there this morning, I felt in kind of a poignant mood. I started coming to this meeting in 1958, a long time ago, when it was two locations back at the 6300 Club, and I was just a month and 2 months sober, I guess. And I didn't like it then, but I got to like it over the years. Now, it's been a very traditional, great old meeting. It moved to a club when the club moved up by Molly's house on Pico, and then it moved here. And they had the same secretary for 23 years. It really was a traditional, wonderful place, and she died. Everybody just milled around aimlessly for a long time. But then they decided to have an election, and they've done very well since then. This is a good group. I enjoy being here. But I feel in kind of a strange mood today, kind of a historical mood. I guess it's the end of the year, so we can talk about anything I want to and wipe out the first. But today, I was listening during the readings, and I want to give you some historical background that'll help you. In the mid-1960s, there was a guy in the San Fernando Valley named Bill Davidson. And he was kind of a perverse old fool, and he was strong-willed, and when they would read the traditions, he would whisper along with them, principles before personalities. He'd say, oh, shut up, Bill. Not going to shut up. Needs to be said. This went on for a little while. And then three young guys, apparently, one of my sponsors is how I knew about it, start mocking Bill. They'd say, principles before personalities. Is that right, Bill? Shut up. Not going to shut up. We need that. And this went on for a little while. And then they got a speaker from Sylvan Cedros who came in there one day and heard this and thought it was a new spiritual breakthrough. Took it back to the Sylvan Cedros group, and they started saying principles before personalities. He said, why are you saying that? I don't know. Then for about, must have been 15 years, there were four groups in the middle of the San Fernando Valley who would say principles before personality. We say, we're going to talk for the Greek chorus today. And little by little, it was fine, kind of humorous. Then somehow it got out of the cork got out of the bottle, and you begin hearing it, the bacilli was spreading around here and there. You'd hear it in Ocean Park, and you heard it in Pasadena sometimes, and little by little. And after a while, some of the places now, they join in at the end of chapter 5. They join in at the end of the traditions. They join in. They probably join at the end of the promises if they knew what they were. But anyway, I have no objection to it. A lot of people take exception to it, but if you're new, you don't have to join in and chant, because it has nothing to do with AA. All it does is disturb some people, and the only thing you're doing is mocking Bill Davidson, and he's been dead since 1971. So that's the end of that history lesson. And here's another little history lesson for you. In 1939, a woman in New York came here so excited because her brother, a bad drunk in Los Angeles, had gotten sober in New York from these guys in this new thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. And she brought the manuscript of the book out with her. It hadn't been printed yet. She had the manuscript. And she wanted to spare it, and so she advertised in the paper, "Wives, do you have husbands that are drunkards? There's now an answer." Advertised in the Times, and call this number. And some of them called, and she said, "I'm setting up a meeting down on the Hotel Cecil on Skid Row, on the edge of Skid Row, on Sunday morning. Come down at 11 o'clock. So that morning, about 12 or 13 guys came in, not very happy. And she said, "Wonderful, I'm going to show you something." And she took them up in the mezzanine. She said, "I've rented this little room, and I want you folks now to get together and discuss how you can stay sober." So they went in there, and they said, "Well, aren't you going to come in?" She said, "I can't come in. I'm not an alcoholic." "Well, what are we supposed to talk about?" She said, here's the manuscript of the book. You can look at that." There was one guy there with a shirt and tie on, an old guy named Marty Joseph, so I got to know 30 years later. He said, "Well," they said, "why don't you read something out of that book, and then we'll talk about it." So we went down the table of contents and found how it works. So that should be something. So he read for about 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and they discussed it. Then they all went home, and then that was the end of it. And the meeting fell apart. It didn't do very well, and pretty soon they tried to start again a little bit later, and they at somebody's house, and they had a few people there. They said, "We don't even know how to start the meeting." "Well, why don't you read that part that Morty read that time? That's kind of good." So they read that, and little by little, over a period of time in California, in Southern California, when I got sober, this was the only place in the world, but everybody read chapter 5. Everybody read chapter 5, every meeting. And then somehow, again, it got out, and pretty soon you heard it in Denver, and then pretty soon you heard it in Chicago, and then pretty soon you heard it's read all over the world now. And nobody ever knows this because Marty Joseph did not know what to read in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. But by divine intercession or by blind luck, he got the gist of AA in those 3 pages. And they've always been very helpful to all of us. But of course, when we come here new, we don't care about that at all. You new people, who cares? I came here as a member. I was sent to AA in a sense in 1949, and I wasn't sent there by a judge. I was a senior at the university, and I was getting some trouble. I was acting bizarrely, and I'd started drinking in the war overseas when some guys got me a little Norwegian lad to drink whiskey, and I'll tell you something, I always liked drinking. I hear people today, it hurts me when I hear people today say things like, "That whiskey, it never was any good. It was terrible." It's like hear somebody knock an old girlfriend, Well, she may be a pig now, but she didn't used to be. She used to be a wonderful girl, Because alcohol, I think say, alcohol is the best friend I ever had. Best friend I ever had. Friends come and go, lovers come and go, jobs come and go, cities come and go, states come and go. But when a few drinks is just replenishing everything spiritual inside of you, just, oh God, it's so good. You just, you almost feel like leaning over and saying, "Was it good for you?" Yeah. And the only problem I ever had is that I loved it, and enabled me to do many things I might not have done. When I was 15, I was over in Pearl Harbor, and I wasn't manly, but I wasn't afraid either. It was just dumb. And drinking made me feel manly, and it enabled me to do things. And as I said, when I was at the University of Wisconsin, we won second place in the national debate finals. And I was drinking every time I debated because I had quick minds and quick answers. And just blah, blah, blah. We lost to Notre Dame or some Catholic school. But my problem I discovered is that I have a tendency sometimes to drink a little too much. I was glad years later when my psychiatrist told me I have many times been thoughtlessly overserved. But my problem has always been the first time I went to a meeting, went in there and 8 fat guys sitting around a table, and, what the hell are you doing here? I thought, that's a strange introduction, but I was 22, and I looked younger than I was. And so it's like some kid coming in here now about 10 and saying, I think I'm an alcoholic. Oh, do you? I think you have a broken nose. You know, all these guys, there was nobody, I understand why it was, because I was very young, and there wasn't anybody in that state under 40 in AA. Don't go for that chair, pal. I said, don't go for that chair. There's one right in there, right over there, in the loge. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm sorry. This is a memorized talk, so I'll have to start over. My name is Clancy Imislund, and I'm an alcoholic. But I sat in these meetings for about a week, and it didn't take me long to discover that what alcoholics was, and alcoholics, and I wasn't one of them. Alcoholics are people whose problem is alcohol, and they come to AA and get a sense of elation about admitting it, apparently. Then they return to God, find spiritual solace, and then they show their gratitude by helping others. And none of those things seemed to have any effect on me. My problem really wasn't alcohol. My friend was alcohol. My point is, how can I slow it down? How can I not drink to excess? And somebody gave me the copy of the big book to read, and I read that. And I was a writer. I became a writer also later professionally. And they always say this is a badly written book. It isn't a badly written book at all. It's a good book. It's just that it's terribly dull, you know. It's just, Jesus. In fact, some years later when I got sober again, in the late 1950s, my new sponsor had me read the book again. I said, I've read that book. He said, well, read it again. So I read it again. I thought, I really misjudged this book. It's much duller than I remember. Just, you know, I wrote things like, buy this product, buy Borden product. And this just, if you're thorough at this stage of your development, but you plow through it. But what I didn't know is that in that book, and I guess I skimmed through it, in chapter 3, they described my life, and the life, it turns out, of most people like us who come to these meetings, but I didn't know at the time. And they talk about what we have in common. If you're new, you look around the room, there's a lot of things we have in common, different sizes and shapes and colors and stories and accents and different things. But one thing we have in common they talk about, somewhere along the line in our lives, without even being aware of it mostly, we have voluntarily or involuntarily accepted the obsession that somehow, someday, we will control and enjoy our drinking. It says the persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many of us pursue it into the gates of insanity and death, and I've watched a lot of people do that. And why would that be? Why would you keep pursuing it? Anything that's making trouble out of you. I remember saying to my sponsor in 1958, the man who finally saved my bacon, I could talk to him. I said, why the hell do these alcoholics, I'm not really an alcoholic, why do these alcoholics drink so much if they know it's bad for them? He said, kid, you say you've been around AA, you don't seem to know much at all. Alcoholics don't drink alcohol because it's bad for them. He said, you know what alcoholics are? They're people who get an unnatural reaction to alcohol. I said, yes, I know that, Bob. It said, I didn't have any front teeth and I didn't talk as well. I said, it sets up the phenomenon of craving. Then they drink until they go crazy. So I said, that's podium talk. He said, I'll tell you why alcoholics drink. And he had a Coke in his hand. He said, if this were Johnny Walker, the effect of that drink would be almost instantly alter my perception of reality. To just make it softer, just a little warmer, a little more pleasant. Drink it a little bit more, and pretty soon you're a little more at ease with the people around you. Hi. And it's just wonderful. It just removes the blockages in your inside somehow. And nobody seems to ever realize that. They say, why do you drink? You go to the hospital every time you drink. And I puzzled that. I thought, why don't I try harder? And I didn't realize I was trying as hard as I possibly could. And not understanding that if drinking does that wonderful thing for me, I'm lost. There's no way out. I didn't know it at the time, and nobody knew it for 4,000 years. But I drank, and it was wonderful. But my problem is alcohol when I drink too much and get drunk. But up till that time, it's wonderful. I don't get drunk every time I drink. Sometimes I drink and just feel good. Sometimes I don't. But it seems like sometimes it's critical. I have to stay sober. That's when I drink too much or something. It's just a weird mix-up. And I have a lot of emotions that I can't deal with. One time, the only time I ever really gave it all I had, I guess, was in Texas. And I was, at that time, it was in a strange pattern. Went through a little pattern in the 1950s where when I got to a certain stage of drinking, I would counsel police officers, which is a short-lived profession, I'll tell you. And I went to jail a lot overnight, not for anything big. I'm not a big felon like Johnny Harris or these guys. I'm just a down-to-earth, everyday guy. And they'd throw me in jail. We're going to cool you off, boy. And I came out to jail one morning, and my neighbor was there to greet me, and I said, you shouldn't come down here. I got that policeman's badge number. I'm going to get him. He really rousted me terribly. She said, I don't know about that, but while you were out drunk, your little son died, and we couldn't find you. And that just about killed me, because I had 3 little girls and a little boy, and he was the apple of my eye. He was going to be the next president or something. And we took him up to Wisconsin and buried him at the foot of his grandmother's grave. And I put my hand in his casket and I said, John Imislund, this will never happen again. I promise you, I'm so sorry. We went back to Texas where I lived. And I started coming home from work at night, having dinner with my children. I hadn't done that for a long time. I'd get there later. And after dinner, we'd work on the homework or go out for rides and go to a movie sometime. And it was really wonderful. I never went to A. A would just make me think more about drinking. It was good to do this, and every time we had a meal, we said a little prayer for baby John, and it was very great. But then what happened, took a little while longer this time, but happened every time I stopped drinking. I feel good for a while, and then someone comes into my bedroom in the middle of the night and puts an invisible spring in my gut, and the next day they start to tighten it. And it doesn't come out as, I need a drink. It comes out as just a little restlessness. Just a little irritability. Just a little tired of these idiots around me. And little by little it gets tough. And I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars in psychoanalysis to try to break that pattern. And I thought I've had it several times, but I haven't. Because it turns out the only sure way to break that pattern. But then you have to say, I'll watch it this time. Not knowing that you can. But I didn't drink. And it got tense. I found myself getting tenser and tenser, and pretty soon I didn't like that job anymore, and life was, whatever technicolor was in the world around me was gone back to gray, and my kids, Mary, take your sisters and go to your room, for Christ's sake. I'm sorry, I don't mean to howl. We'll play tomorrow. I just hated myself. And I needed a drink so bad. I didn't need a drink. What I needed to do was to relax, and drinking made it possible. But I'd promised my dead son I wouldn't drink. And one day it got so bad, my wife took the children to church, and I just pulled the car in the garage and hooked up a hose and the exhaust pipe and turned the motor and went to sleep and died. And a neighbor next door happened to be looking out his window having a cup of coffee in his breakfast nook or something, and saw me go in there and heard the motor running. I didn't come out, so we ambled over to see if I was all right, and he found me dead in the car, and they pulled me out and beat in my chest and rushed me to the hospital, oxygenated me, and kept me there for about a week while they examined me and determined I was seriously mentally ill and put me in the state insane asylum. Now that's how I get when I get sober, folks. That's not exactly a drinking problem. That's some kind of a secret, sensitive problem. And I've tried again and again, but every time I try, sooner or later, somebody puts that spring in my gut, and I just can't handle it. And why would I stop drinking this time? This time, I'd pushed the envelope so far. The last morning I drank, two big guys threw me out of this midnight mission on Skid Row. Mission on this. Get out of here, you son of a bitch, and don't come back. I tried to explain to them, I'm not really a son of a bitch. 3 years ago, I was on the faculty of the University of Texas. Ads that I helped write, the L.C. Nelmer ads for the Borden Company, they were running this very week in Life and Time, New Yorker. I've had my picture in the New York Times for one of my achievements. But it's hard to explain these things in midair, you know. And I got out in the cold rain like it was last night, and I walked 71 blocks to the nearest AA club on Wilshire and Fairfax, because that's the only place in the world when you get down and out and sick and your mouth is bleeding and your clothes are gone and you're torn and sick and desperate. It's the only place in the world where you're welcome. You know, only place in the world where the worse you look, the better they like it. This one's mine, Fred. And I got to that stupid club and living in the back seat of an abandoned car because there was no place for me to stay. He let me stay in the Joe Quinn's back of his Mercury that didn't run. That's not funny. And hanging around that club and getting my daily dose of humiliation. Hearing people say, now listen, I'm telling you, you stay away from that son of a bitch. You go down right with him, see? Everybody was told to stay away from me, which made me feel less than. And I had no idea that I'd stay sober at that time because I had no reason to stay sober, none whatsoever, none. Except to just face more agony. And I fell into the hands of a man who was able to get inside my head. And I don't know whether it was my desperation or his wisdom, but he began to show me things about life and AA and myself. And one of the most important things I learned in my first year of sobriety was that everything I believed about AA was wrong. Almost right, sounds right. I discovered that people with alcohol problems are not alcoholics of our type. And you don't get an elation by admitting you're an alcoholic. Usually it's a feeling of humiliation. And you don't return to God. And you don't show your gratitude by helping others. All of these things are almost right, but not quite. I remember when I discovered that people with problems with alcohol were not alcoholics of our type. He used to pick me up sometimes and take me to meetings. He took me to the Brentwood meeting. Used to be about 3 blocks from where it is now, in a dance studio. We all liked it because one whole wall was mirrors, and we could try to get a seat for you. Newcomer, get out of the way, for Christ's sake. But he spoke, and there was a beginning speaker, a 5-minute, 10-minute speaker, who got up and said, I want to thank you all. I've just come here tonight. I haven't been here for many months, but I came here my first month, and I learned about my drinking problem, and I've stopped drinking, and now I'm doing very well. My business is flourishing. My children and I are getting along well, and I guess I don't need your program, but it really has been wonderful. Thank you very much. And after the meeting, old Bob pounced on him and really gave him a sharp talking to. And I couldn't imagine why. On the way back to the hotel, I would do a little club. I said, why do you jump on that kid? He said, because he's got an alcohol problem. I said, Bob, I hate to break this to you, but that's what AA is about. People with alcohol problems. No, it isn't. People with alcohol problems, alcohol should be in AA. I said, really? What do you think they should do, Bob? He said, they should quit drinking and clean up their act, and when they're offered a drink, say no thank you. I said, that doesn't work. For Christ's sake, I've tried that for 10 years. That doesn't work. He said, I guess your problem isn't alcohol then. You must have the problem I got and everybody else in all these meetings. Something called, it sounds like alcohol, fools a lot of people. Something called alcoholism. I said, oh, Jesus, Bob. Don't play word games with me. I look terrible, but I'm smarter than you'd ever believe. Shut up, he explained. And he gave me about a 3-hour harangue, most of which I was able to blot out before I went insane. But the point he made somewhere in there that festered in my mind after that. He said, alcohol problems are overcome by stopping drinking and then straightening up. In this strange thing called alcoholism, which unfortunately for you and me looks almost exactly the same to the naked eye, this mind-consuming, perception-distorting, bodily eroding thing called alcoholism, you'll discover that stopping drinking and cleaning up your act has no significant long-term effect other than to gradually make it so painful you can't stand it. I said, Jesus, Bob, I never heard anybody say that before. He said, well, that's what it is. I said, then why do they drink alcohol? And he pointed out to me, because it does something special for you. He says, if it doesn't do something special for you, you'll never have any trouble. Because when you get tired of drinking, you stop drinking. But people like us, alcohol does so much for us, it makes sobriety untenable after a while. And Jesus. I said, well, then, tonight, or the other night at the club, there's a girl there who said she'd been sober and got drunk again. Why'd she do that? And he gave me an explanation for that. He gave me a reason I thought was stupid at the time. But I heard a tape of it 25 years ago. I thought, absolutely right on. He said, people like us are part of the human race. Human race, one of the problems of the human race is growing up, maturing in the world, becoming mature, getting along. It's hard growing up. You got to take a lot of crap from people. People want you to do things you don't understand. You got to give in to things you don't believe in. You have to do all sorts of crap. He said, that whole process is called maturing. When you come to problems, you got to find a way to solve them. You can't run away. You find conflicts, you got to deal with them. But eventually, although you don't even know what you're looking for, human beings get to what's called emotional maturity. And if you get there, you live a pretty good life. You seem to be able to hold a job. You instinctively know how to do that. Get along with your co-employees. Get along with the neighbors. And just have good things happen. He said, but this almost never happens to alcoholics. I said, why not? He said, because people like us, when we come to problems that we need to solve for our emotional maturity, we've discovered we can drink them away. Here's to you, household finance. Here's to you, bitch, I never liked you anyway. Hey, Mr. Carlson, take your job and shove it up your nose. And they all work, because I've done them all. But every time they work, it's almost though a little invisible cold ball forms in the psyche somewhere. And they just mount up. You don't even know they're there. The only time they're activated is when you stop drinking. When you stop drinking, they make you poised to have an emotional explosion. And sometimes at home, sometimes it happens at office, sometimes it happens in the street. It used to happen to me at the office sometimes. My jobs where I was doing well, someone seemed to disrespect me. Someone seemed to hurt my feelings. Someone put me down that didn't have the right to do it. And I think, that you nasty little thing. And you'd like to get revenge, but you can't, because that makes you look childish. So you think about it. And think, God, after a few days, you notice his friends are kind of in on it too. They're looking at you funny. And little by little, you get to brood about it, right? Wake up at night and think about it in the middle of the night. You actually can get to a point where you literally must, scientists say that people like us sometimes get to a point where we must drink to preserve our sanity. If that isn't an irony in itself. And drink, and eventually I get drunk and I lose my job. I say, gee, Clancy, what happened? You had such a big job, making big money. Oh, they're a bunch of phonies. I didn't like them. He said, that's a result of emotional immaturity. And as he pointed out to me, alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous, they come, although they don't know it, they come here with a great goal. You may never become emotionally mature, but we may teach you how to act in public. You know, oh, good, I need it. And that was in December of, just about the same time of the year, December of 1958, about a week before Christmas. And I've been thinking, maybe I am, what if I'm an alcoholic? What if I'm not really insane? What if I'm just not prey to this insanity? Maybe there's a name for the pattern. And I tried it on. It didn't fit well, but I know it helped me a week later. Because on Christmas Eve, we had a meeting at the club, and some guy said, you're not doing very well, kid. Here. He gave me $10. I said, thanks. And then everybody went left. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Ha 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 ha! I thought, this is the first Christmas I've been alone in the back seat of an abandoned car, My children, who I would give my life to be with, are gone, far away. I have nothing to give them. I'm just terrible. I thought, where can I get away from Christmas? And I had a great brains for my first maturity. I walked 6 blocks and went to Cantor's Jewish Delicatessen. Sat there all night, spent my $10, never heard one Merry Christmas all night long. Several Happy Hanukkahs, whatever the hell that was. But I came to understand, if alcohol is my problem, stopping drinking would solve it. But in alcoholism, stopping drinking takes away the sedation for the insanity of your sobriety. And that's why stopping drinking, as he pointed out to me, is not the answer today. It's just the doorway over there. And he also pointed out to me when we started through the steps, I said, I can't return to God because when my son died, I swore off God. I said, you son of a bitch, you killed my son to punish me. Well, goddamn you, you'll get me at hell, but you won't get me to Len. And I have nothing. When I go to meetings, they talk about God, I get up and leave. And he said, well, nothing today. He says you got to return to God. I said, oh, to a power greater than myself, Bob? Does that fool the other children? Doesn't fool me. I know what they're talking about. It doesn't say that either, kid. Look at the wall. It says you come to believe in something. We never ask you to return to any old sick belief you got. You got to examine them all, because some of them may be killing you. You got to come to believe in something. Can't you believe in a loving AA, a loving God? I said, no, I can't. He said, can't you believe in AA? I said, well, I like it better than I used to, but not much. He says, you think I'm doing better than you are? I said, of course you are, Bob. He said, congratulations, I'm your new higher power. And I could accept that because I believed he was trying to help me. And I discovered that returning me to sanity is not returning me to some abstract belief. It turns out that psychosis is the brain's defense against an unbearable reality. And alcoholics almost never become psychotic. Isn't that strange? You think we're the number one people, but we aren't. Some awful goofy people here, but they're not truly psychotic. Because it turns out, as it was explained to me later, when I become sufficiently pained, when any alcoholic becomes sufficiently in agony, they drink alcohol. And the purpose of alcohol is to alter my perception of reality. The purpose of psychosis is to alter my perception of reality. You and I seem to have the power to introduce temporary psychosis. And tomorrow morning it may be back to reality, but at least I got away tonight for a while. I had the fullness tonight. So I had to come to understand what the second step is saying. There's a power here somewhere. And he said to me, and I'd say to you too, to you new people, he said, these people didn't all come to this meeting to fool you, for Christ's sake. There's got to be a power here that's working for these people. He said, now, all you have to believe there's a power here. You don't have to know what the power is till later in these steps, but believe there's one here that will do what? Make it unnecessary for you to drink to stand life. And I understand that. I said, but I can't return to God, Bob. You see, you don't ever have to return to God if you don't want to, but you may find that you want to after a while. And he told me to write an inventory. I didn't want to do that because I'd take my inventory with a psychiatrist. But I was feeling so bad one day, I said, well, if he's going to be my higher power, and he tells me what to do, I ought to do that. So I wrote an inventory, a terrible thing, just full of, I was so feeling so bad, I put in terrible things. I never would tell my psychiatrist. Asked me one time, why don't you tell your psychiatrist these things? Because when you're paying that kind of money, you can't risk rejection. That's why you don't tell your psychiatrist. You did what, sir? Get out of my office. But first, wash off that chair, will you? Yeah. But he took me on a trip from Santa Monica to Oxnard, gave me a flashlight, and I read it all the way up there. And I got done. I was just terrified. I thought he's going to make me get out of his car and walk home. Just dreadful. I said, that's all, Bob. He said, are you done now? Yeah. He never said, that's the best thing you've done since you got sober, kid. And I said, thought it was. But little by little, I took the steps like that in duress of pain. But the first 3 steps, in my opinion, have kept more people out of AA than anything I know, because we misunderstand. people interpret them all the time. It took me 10 years to discover the steps mean what they say. Hard breakthrough to find that out. You have to admit you're having a problem with drinking. You have to admit you're having a problem without drinking. That's what that dash in there is for in the first step. Admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Dash, which in the English language means end of thought, beginning of new thought. Admitting I have a problem without alcohol. Then I have to come to believe there's some power here, somehow, somewhere, that I don't see at all yet, that will enable me not to have to drink. Then I have to turn my life over to that power, which consists of allowing them to override my judgments. God, that's a tough one. But I'll tell you, if you can find someone who guides you through that, it really gets to be a piece of cake later on. You find yourself making amends you're never going to make. Do all sorts of odd things. Because the purpose of AA is entirely different. So I came to believe that alcohol is not the problem, and I don't have to return to God. And then I also discovered another thing that he pointed out to me, and I got very active trying to help people at first. I did what I wanted. But I discovered that you develop gratitude by helping people. You don't show your gratitude by helping people. You get grateful by helping people. And little by little it comes with you. And if you find that's why I say in the book, when all else fails and you're so sick of yourself, work with another alcoholic. Not that you care whether they live or die, but when I think about that sick kid, I'm not thinking about this sick kid, that's all. It's a great blessing. And so little by little I came to understand the purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you guys who are young girls, this is my opinion. I'm required to say that, although I think I'm secretly speaking for Bill Wilson in heaven. But the purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous, its meetings, its sponsors, its fellowship, its actions, are to very slowly do what alcohol did fast. To change my perception of reality and turn it into a friendlier place. To change my relationship to people so I have some degree of comfort with them. To make me sufficiently insensitive to glances and remarks so I don't have to be troubled by it when someone does them. And go about my business. Think, you don't like me, you must be wrong. Not quite there yet. Next corner, next birthday. But little by little, Alcoholics Anonymous, much to my surprise, I spent a lot of money, as I say, in psychoanalysis. I had a lot of therapy. I had a lot of help from a lot of people. One of the early guys in AA was Ebby, who brought the message to Bill Wilson. He got sober finally in Texas with a guy who helped him stay sober. I worked with that same guy. Didn't help me stay sober. I got drunker and left town because I guess my mind was not fallow yet. You have to find someone that you can believe in. And he troubled me sometimes. I got my first birthday at Malibu because that was a Saturday night meeting that we went to. And he forgot to give me my cake. Didn't even show up. And I called him, prepared to be hurt, and he just told me, well, I'll give it to you next week. Shut up. I was okay. I believed him. But little by little, I finally, after losing about 8 jobs in my first 2 years because my mouth, I couldn't control my mouth, my insolent, smart aleck mouth. But I finally held a job in my 3rd year that was a beginning writer in a medical corporation. I eventually became director of advertising for that big corporation. Had front teeth again, smiled. If any of you new people have lost teeth, let me give you hope. When you become spiritually perfect, they grow back. I don't remember exactly, And I went to work in radio and television in Hollywood. Another guy and I created something called Boss Radio, if you remember that. If you got to be old to remember that, became the #1 hard rock station in the world. We brought the Beatles out here. We just were slicker and hipper than hell. And downtown doing public relations for an oil company, 15 years sober. I was a marketing director in Beverly Hills. When I was 5 years sober, the same family moved back. They all had another little boy, thank God. So I had a little boy to raise, and they're all grown up now. 3 of my daughters just turned 21 in AA this year at the International Convention. We all were together there. It's like herding cats in the rain. But great. It's all very nice. The only trouble is sometimes this AA can make you feel better than you really should. And when I was 15 years sober, I'm afraid I felt better than I really should. And one day I found myself leaving a job in Beverly Hills, and for the last 36 years I've been the managing director of the Skid Row mission that I was thrown out of in 1958, the Midnight Mission. And people say, why would you give up your career on that damn mission? And there's no good answer to that. Well, it was such a significant decrease in salary, I couldn't pass it up. But little by little, I've lived. Yesterday morning, I spent my 38th Christmas on Skid Row serving people, hungry people. Saw Jerry down there, saw a number of people, Mary and her daughter were there giving out gifts to little kiddies. And you'd think that'd give you great elation. It doesn't. It just pisses me off I have to get up on Christmas. But at the end of the day, I'm grateful and I feel good. I had a good day and I had a good evening, and I had dinner with my kids late yesterday afternoon, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and I sat there and tried to pontificate. Well, in the old days. But what I want to say to the new people is this: you can't really judge what's going to happen to you. Your best predictions are worthless around here. You come to realize that you and I have been blessed with the ability to find an answer through alcohol. And the price tag for it is your life. And so if you've had that blessing, you better start working now to pay it off in pieces by going to meetings and having a sponsor and finding some way to do without it, or else you almost certainly will join me laying face down on Skid Row as they were yesterday in their own vomit. Ex-AAs that I know had no chance, said no more. A few months ago, outside my office, I came out and I met Paul Schaefer, who was a member of our group for years and years, very successful. His wife finally convinced him to stop going to AA and just go to church. And I found him dead on the sidewalk, unshaven, dirty, filthy, sick. Because that's what happens to alcoholics. Not because there's anything wrong with the religion, but it never has had the answer because it doesn't do anything about the inside things that have to happen. So I'm glad this day today be safe and sane and sober. I'm glad I don't have to say Merry Christmas. But I'd like to say Happy New Year. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs, long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.